Hello explorers, it is that time of the week where we get adventurous, and you know what, our adventure journey today has led us to Karen Blixen. Welcome to this week's episode of the Hotspot Show with me, Yusta Segete. Now, team explorers, of course I'm excited to explore this place with you. Where I'm standing, it carries such a rich history. This place was internationally acclaimed, has received so many awards of excellence, and at one point it was bought by the Danish government and given to the Kenyan government as an independence gift. Find wide, the place has a rich history, all starting from one person, Karen Blixen, and today it is a museum under the National Museums of Kenya. And team explorers, this is our hotspot of the day, and of course I am excited to welcome you for us to learn and to explore this gem today. So let's enjoy the show, because granted it's going to be yet another beautiful episode. Enjoy. All right, well, team explorers, we are inside Karen Blixen Museum. I'm told out of the 28 institutions that are under the Kenya National Museums of Kenya, this one is among them. And I'm told there are only 3 institutions in Nairobi out of the 28 that are under the National Museums of Kenya. This one being one of them, is it? The other 2 are?
Nairobi National Museums and the Nairobi Gallery.
Aha, amazing. And we went straight up to the point, even without asking you how you're feeling today and how it feels working, you know, under this institution, that is the Karen Blixen Museum.
Wow, that's a very interesting question. Karen Blixen Museum is one of the exciting places for one to work in. It's a beautiful museum. You get a lot of visitors. You get to interact with a lot of people from different backgrounds. So every day you come with a new energy, because you know you're going to meet with different people, you're going to interact, you're going to share a lot of stories with people. So it's very exciting working at the Karen Blixen Museum.
Amazing. And of course you're going to share the story of how this place came to being, because I understand so many stories live here. To begin with, when was this structure put up?
Okay, I tend to believe that you're asking about the building itself.
Yes.
So this building was constructed in the year 1912 by a Swedish engineer by the name Eke Sojegren.
Okay, and then over time we have had so many people living here, Karen herself included. Yeah, perhaps you could just narrow down, you know, how it passed over from one person to the other to a point whereby, you know, the government actually now decided to turn this into a museum. Okay,
this building, after construction in 1912, the owner lived in it, but in 1917, he offered it for sale, and Karen Blixen and her husband, Baron Blixen, bought it and came and started living in this house from the same year, 1917. Karen lived in this house from the year 1917 to the year 1931, when she left for Denmark. But before she left for Denmark, she sold her house and her farm to a real estate developer by the name Richardson and Martins. And then Richardson and Martins subdivided our farm, which was 6,000 acres to 25-acre pieces of land, and sold to different people. Then he remained with the house and 25 acres of land. Then later, this house was bought by a retired army colonel by the name Colonel Lloyd, who lived in it until 1954 when he died, and his daughter by the name Karen continued living in this house. But in the year 1959, the house was offered for sale, and the Royal Danish government bought the house and gave it back to the Kenyan government as an independence gift, together with a grant to build a Women Domestic Science College, as were wishes of Karen. So all this was done in the year 1964, when Kenya became a republic.
Wow, beautiful.
Then after that, after it was now handed over to the government of Kenya, a college, that is the Domestic Science College, was constructed in the year 1966, and the matrons were staying in this house until early 1980s, when it was felt and it was seen that there were people who were coming from far to come and see where Karen Blixen was living, and now the National Museums of Kenya came on board and renovated this house and opened it to the public in the year 1985, and this coincided with the launch of the film Out of Africa, which was acted from our book Out of Africa.
Beautiful, beautiful. It's amazing how so many owners, you know, lived in this house, and then it was given back to the government as a gift. Then the government again made this a museum, and that is why we are here today, Team Explorer, to just explore the rich history that lives in this house. And Rhoda has just mentioned one of the greatest things that actually makes this place a hotspot, the book Out of Africa. And I know there are 2 books that Karen wrote, and they were made, you know, as a film eventually. But let's go to the Out of Africa book, which I think in my position is the most common book, you know, here in Africa. Were the scenes acted in this house or just around the perimeters?
Actually, as you mentioned, out of our 9 books, 2 books have been turned into a film. That is the book Out of Africa and the book The Barbed Feast, which is our last book. And the book Out of Africa, the scenes, some of the scenes were acted in this house, and some of other scenes were acted in a different house, because they realized that the corridors of this house were too narrow for the big machines to film. So they modified another house to look like this one, but everything which was done along the corridor was acted in this house.
And you also mentioned that we get a chance to see some of the props that were used on the movie.
Sure.
Including them being?
The attire, which were worn by the movie stars. Robert Redford, who acted as Dennis Fingerton, and Mary Streep, who acted as Karen Blixen.
Amazing. And when people come to visit here, do they get to see a snippet of the movie Out of Africa?
We don't show the movie Out of Africa, but we've stocked it in our shop. They can purchase the movie and go and watch.
Good morning.
Have you had trouble?
Now and then, have you?
No, I'm traveling to Nairobi.
Well, you caught the right train then.
Oh, get away from there! Shoo! Shoo!
Shoot.
Oh, that's all my crystal, my Limoges.
Ah, they didn't know it was Limoges. To Kenny Hopper.
2 years ago, we also screened the movie on site so that the local people, together with visitors, can see the movie from the site.
All right. And where we are standing right here, you tell me that almost everything is what used to be, used to exist when Karen was living here. Perhaps you can just tell us, you know, some of the things that you have still stored to this date that we get to see.
Actually, where we are standing, I would like to mention that this house is today 112 years old, and everything, the house, is as original as it was. When you look at the wall panelings, it's made of mahogany, and you can see the beautiful decorations.
Absolutely.
So this is original. We only do conservation from time to time, and we don't interfere with anything. And this conservation is not done just by anybody. The National Museums of Kenya has trained conservators and also curators who curate the exhibition. So the experts are the ones who do the conservation to make sure we don't interfere with anything.
Amazing. We also know that the pieces of art hang here, some of them are hers. Perhaps you could just start with what is right behind you. And I can see one that is right behind me. These are original pieces that Karen used to paint.
So what you can see here are some of our paintings. These are copies. The original paintings are in Denmark, Karen Blixen Museum in Denmark, because our mother's house was also turned into a museum, but it's a younger museum than this one. So what you see here, Karen painted the local people whom she interacted with freely. Like, for example, this is a painting of a young Kikuyu girl who was known as Jerry. And this girl was believed to be the most beautiful girl in the farm.
Oh, wow.
And because of that, Karen decided to paint her. And then she also has another story, that during her time, because of her beauty, she got married in a very big ceremony which was held in the farm.
Wow.
And her husband paid the highest bride price of 250 goats and a very big pot of honey.
Wow.
And behind you is a young Somali boy. I want to mention that when she was living here, she interacted with various communities, including the Kikuyu people, the Kamba, the Somali, and her neighbors were the Maasais. And she lived with them harmoniously. So that was a young Somali boy who was known as Abdullahi. So Abdullahi was a very talented young boy, and Karen observed that being very talented, he needed to be assisted to develop his talents. So she took him to a Mombasa school where he studied law. Later, he became a lawyer here in Kenya. And when he went back to Somaliland, he became one of the first judges in Somaliland.
Oh, interesting. Let me tell you, the fact that we are here in this museum that has been named by someone like Karen, we ought to know the history behind it before we go to the nitty-gritties, because we want to explore this place and see exactly what is here, everything she used, you know, dating 1912. So for now, we are going to take a short commercial break. That is to mean stick around. So see you after this break. Let's explore this place together. Welcome back from that break, Team Explorers. We are still here at Karen Blixen Museum. Now, where I am seated, this was considered a clinic by Karen. Rhoda here, equally sitting on yet another bench, an extension of the clinic, is going to tell us more about this place. First, to begin with, are these stones, Rhoda? You tell me they are unique. Why?
Okay, these are millstones, and Karen documented in the book Out of Africa. They were brought by some Indians to the country, and these Indians were doing milling. And she documented in the book Out of Africa that these stones, one time, the Indians were murdered, and the investigation was done of who murdered them, and a conclusion was never made. So it was not declared who murdered them. And these stones remained where they were for a very long time because the local people really feared these stones. Because when you look at the top of the stones, you realize that they have some red marks. And the local people used to believe that this is the blood of the Indians who were murdered. Because of their cultures and their beliefs, they never wanted to touch them because it was like a ritual has to be done for them to be cleansed before now they can interact with them. But because Karen Blixen did not believe in that, she decided to pick them, came and made these two tabletops and started using it as a clinic. As I said earlier, she used to treat minor ailments, and she could sit here every early morning and the local people could come and line up here for our treatment.
Oh, wow. These are just one of the things that we ought to see when we come here. Among many other things that you have now conserved for people to see. Just take us through, you know, a rundown of how the entire house feels and looks, and what, if they come here, what they expect to see.
Okay, when you come here as a visitor, you will get a guide who will take you through the story of Karen Blixen when you are seated somewhere comfortably. And then you'll be given an access of the museum, the 8 rooms I've talked about. And as you enter the house, you'll find a showcase which is displaying the 8 books which were written by Karen Blixen. And the guide will explain to you
the books. Oh, I see. Nature is equally thriving here, because, allow me to cut you short, because where I'm standing here, I can almost see the tip of ngong holes, you know, tipping through these bushy areas. I presume this also, besides being a clinic, she would enjoy a good view of the surrounding, because it just looks spectacular. So as you're saying,
as I said, and as I talk about the Ngong Hills again, the Ngong Hills is one of the favorites of Karen Blixen. In the book Out of Africa, she begins by saying, in Africa, I had a farm at the foot of the Ngong Hills. And again, in one of her letters to her mother, she told her mother she loved the Ngong Hills so much, and if there's anything she wished to take back to Denmark, she would take, if mountains were moved, she would take the Ngong Hills to Denmark. Okay, sadly. Now as a visitor, you'll see the books which were written by Karen Blixen, including the book Out of Africa. You'll also see photographs of Karen Blixen. You'll see artworks. You will see furniture. you will see the different rooms with the different artifacts which are found in the different rooms. Like in the study room, you'll be able to explore a map of the whole estate, the 6,000 acres of land which Karen Blixen owned.
Yeah.
You'll also see a photo with her brother. You'll see a safe where all our money and other valuables were kept. You'll see the various translations of the book Out of Africa. And you'll also see a telephone which she came with when she was coming to Kenya, but on arrival she realized she could not make calls, so she started using it as a decoration in her house. You'll also be taken to the living room where she used to entertain her guests with stories, and you'll be shown where she used to sit when she was telling stories to her visitors. You'll also be able to see some of her wall hangings, which she went with in Denmark, but in the year 2013, we were able to retrieve them and put them back. You'll be able to see a Corona typewriter where she used to type her manuscripts and letters. You'll also see a letter which was written by our first president, Mzee Jomo Kenyatta, to Karen in the year 1937, telling her to remember the people she left behind, because he knew very well Karen loved the people she was living with.
Speaking of letters, sorry to cut you short, I read somewhere that she used one of the letters she received from, I guess, a king to heal a man, you know, that was sick, and she placed the letter on top of, you know, the man had to place the letter somewhere, and then miraculously he got healed, and apparently they started calling her letters the magical letters of Karen. Was that the story?
Yeah, that is the story. What happened, there was an accident.
Okay.
A girl fell from a tree, and then the local people, because they knew Karen was a doctor, they ran very quickly to Karen, and Karen looked at the patient, and she was like, now what do I do? And she looked around, and in her hand, she had this letter. So she just placed the letter on the body, and somehow, the patient started recovering. And this now turned to be like a magical letter. Yeah.
And so she could use it over and over in some instances, or that was just the one?
That is what the one incident she used it. She never documented any other incident.
Does that letter exist? Because I want to touch it. I want to see if it can heal me of some of these troubles that I'm going through. Does that letter exist?
Okay, that letter does not exist, but we have a book, a compilation of our letters from Africa, with so many letters which somebody can go through and see the kind of letter she used to send to her workers, send to her mother, and also the letters our loyal workers used to send her.
Beautiful. Just taking you back to the house again, I noted quite a number of things, including the different floor mats that she has.
The skin rugs you've seen, that's how the house setting was. And remember, at that time, they used to go for hunting, and whenever they hunted, because hunting was allowed, the white settlers used to keep animal skins in their houses as rugs.
Okay. What would you say is one of the most unique things that we can see, you know, in this house about Karen, or just generally about the museum?
The museum has so many things you can see. Starting from the house itself, as I told you, is 112 years and is still intact. That is one thing you can look at and appreciate about the architecture of the building. The story of Karen Blixen, which I said you see somewhere and somebody gives you the story, the full story, so that you can understand who Karen was and what role she played to the local people, and give you the reason why Karen is remembered even today.
To this date, and that we have, rather the government has decided to make this a museum. Now, we have a few minutes left. I want to take you off from, you know, the structure, but I see you guys have grounds around here. Do you hire them for any kind of social activities or something of the sort? Yes,
we have very beautiful grounds, which we hire out to the local people for weddings and corporate events. We also do other events like movie screening, which is organized by the National Museums of Kenya and partners. We also have educational programs, which we do to school groups. We also have activities by birders. This place has a nature trail, which is a few meters from here, where you can walk through nature, see the different tree species, different birds, and some mammals which are there, including the tree hyrax. Then you can also be able to see agricultural farm implements dating early 1920s. And you can also see some coffee bushes of Arabica coffee, which is the coffee which Karen Blixen planted. And on the grounds again, you can be able to meet with the Kenyan artists, whom we give them space to come and showcase their artwork, and also as a way of motivating them to earn a living out of that. And we also have a gift shop where visitors can purchase souvenirs so that they can carry memories of the Karen Blixen Museum. And we also have a coffee shop on site because we tell about the story of coffee, and visitors want to taste this coffee we are talking about, so that they have a whole experience of the Karen Blixen Museum.
All round. Beautiful.
Yes.
One of the most common questions our people like to ask, what are your opening hours and on which days are you actually open?
Okay, as the National Museums of Kenya, we open every day, including weekends and public holidays, from 8 in the morning to 5:30 in the evening.
Beautiful. I like how you're incorporating adventure, education, and all that, and still keeping up the history of Karen, and of course, what we are now considering as one of the museums here in Kenya. You know what? At this point, personally, I have learned quite a lot, and I've been able to appreciate this place, you know, for what it is. Thank you so much for your time. Any parting shot, perhaps?
Thank you so much. I would like to tell our viewers that you are welcome to the Karen Blixen Museum, and we are open every day. And when you come, feel free, come and interact with us. Let us learn about this history, about our country. Let us get to know where we came from as a country, and let us know where we are going in the future in terms of conservation of our heritage.
Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode. We have been at the Karen Blixen Museum, and you know, every other Saturday we take you to different places where we get you entertained, informed, and educated. This has been one of those places. So you know what? We see you yet another Saturday for another exciting episode here on the Hotspot Show. Keep tuning in to KTN for more shows.